Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the February 1st, 2023 special call meeting of the Newbern Board of Aldermen. I believe I saw Ms. Sampson, Reverend Sampson. If you don't mind, it's not technically on our agenda, but if you wouldn't mind opening us up with prayer, we would appreciate that. And for everybody's benefit, there are clearly no microphones, so please speak loud and clear tonight. Thank you.
Praise the Lord, everybody, and Happy New Year. Heavenly Father, as a love for the precious name of Jesus, thank you for your loving kindness and mercy. And Father, thank you for this gathering this evening, Heavenly Father. Oh God, we ask you to be over here, Heavenly Father, forgive us for our many sins. And Father, as we go forth, Heavenly Father, let's do things that are decent and in order. We thank you now in the name of the Father, the Son, praise the Holy Ghost. Praise the Lord. Amen.
Amen. If you would, let's stand and pledge flag for our country. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, if you would, please call the roll.
Alderman Friedel.
Here.
Alderman Royal. Here. Alderman Asser.
Here.
Mayor Odom.
Here.
Alderman Kinsey.
Here.
Alderman Best. Alderman Brunson.
Here.
For the record, Alderman Royal is under the weather, but she is participating via telephone. So, Board, I think everyone that's here, I'm sure, knows why we're here tonight. Number one on our agenda is to entertain public comment for the sale of 304 and 306 South Front Street. It's up to the Board if you want to put any time limits or regulations on this. If not, the public will have ample time to say whatever they want without any restrictions. Hearing none, we'll get started with public comment. Clerk. First up is Mr. Nelson McDaniel of 214 New Street.
Good evening, and thanks for letting me say a couple of words tonight. My words are probably superfluous and won't come down on either side or one of the many sides of this issue. I am a native New Bernian, and as such I was able as a young boy and through my life to watch lots of decisions made by public officials that affected the way New Bern is today, be it decisions like the reconstruction of Tryon Palace, or be it decisions that, to my way of thinking, were very destructive, like the decision to build the bridge at the end of Broad Street, which resulted in half a century of problems for the city. We all feel, I'm sure, with intensity about this issue as many others. And I don't think there's anyone in New Bern who loves our downtown any more than I. I won't say I love it more than other people, but I don't think there's anyone who can outlove me on it. But with all of that, and with the things I've seen through the years that have not been helpful in terms of the way the city has evolved and the things that have been helpful, to me the most important thing that we have to preserve, if we're preservationists, is an attitude of civility and a willingness to listen to other people, to try to hear ideas through without necessarily attacking those who differ from us, and to carry that same spirit beyond a meeting, because some of us, when all is said and done, will be disappointed. Some people will be very happy. That's inevitable. But I would just ask, and I do this in the name of my great hero, William Gaston, that we in New Bern treat each other with civility and respect. There have been issues sometimes recently where I feel that has not happened. And people can have differences without necessarily trying to make those with whom they differ feel as if they don't belong or don't have the right to an opinion. So as I say, that's probably superfluous, and it certainly probably didn't need to be said, but I had a need to say it. I will be leaving to go elsewhere at 6:45, so I won't hear it if a fight breaks out. Well, I'll be a block away, so if a fight breaks out, I might hear it. But I just hope that at this meeting and in discussions about this issue or future issues, we can regard each other with the kind of civility that is the most important thing that we can preserve in this town.
Appreciate those comments. Next up is Ms. Lynn Herrickle, 602 Middle Street.
Thank you very much for having this opportunity to speak this evening. I'm just going to be reading a letter that was sent to the Board of Aldermen on behalf of my Board of Directors, Swiss Bear. Downtown New Bern has limited locations for development. The vacant field at the corner of Craven and South Front, known as the Talbot's Lot, is one of those few such locations. When these parcels were recently placed on the market by the city, we as a community invited the opportunity for the development of this land. It appears that a proposed buyer has a vision that will return the parcels to commercial function, which is likely their highest and best overall use. Furthermore, commercial development of these parcels seem to be in accordance with our urban design plan in terms of having development on the street lines of our greater downtown area, as well as city ordinances and guidelines. The potential buyer did go through the proper legal process to purchase this property. Barring a drastic change in circumstances, Swiss Bear believes that there is an ethical commitment to proceed with the intent to sell. Failure to follow through in proper fashion could very well have a negative impact on our community for development in the near and distant future. As a Main Street America organization chartered by the City of New Bern, Swiss Bear believes in stimulating preservation-based economic development in greater downtown New Bern. Since the city will require the buyer to adhere to HPC guidelines and strict construction code to ensure that the infill is aligned with existing neighboring structures, it really comes down to being in support of developing the lot or not. Swiss Bear is in favor of moving forward with the sale of the parcels for commercial development. Swiss Bear does understand the interest in a town square, but believes Union Point Park is a better location for those types of amenities, since it is already our community's most loved park and gathering spot, and is only one block away from Craven and South Front Streets.
Thank you. Next up is Mr. Kevin Roberts of 1008 Carlton Way.
I was hoping I would be one of the first 3 or 4 and kind of feed off of. That's right. We've also submitted a letter, and Brenda, I believe, has that. I'm not going to read from that necessarily, but tried to speak a little bit from the gut. I too hope that we can do this, all of us, without fighting with one another. I mean, we're going to disagree. Disagreement's the only thing that's ever pushed anything forward is good, healthy disagreement. So, Nelson, I appreciate your words earlier. My thoughts are all over the place on this thing. Somehow, I think part of this conversation has turned towards another park. And I was lucky enough to be involved in the process that Parks and Rec was doing some weeks back, where they're looking at our Parks and Rec, and they want to do more with our parks. There's a lot of attention being given to that, but as Lynn said, to think about this as a park, you can stand on this one and see the other one. And we proved to one another several months ago that Union Point is sacred to all of us. We proved that. We spilled a little blood in the process, but all of us agree Union Point is sacred. Before we spend money to make this one a park, why not put some of those funds into new amenities at Union Point? That's the rambling version of it. The straightforward version is that the chamber, I'm a business advocate. That's what you pay me to get up and do. Your chamber is a business advocate. I work to make sure the businesses in this market can be as successful as they can. Toward that end, you have to think about balanced growth and development. Ward 1 does not suffer for park space. Ward 1 has more park space than any other ward in the city. Balance and growth. Balance, growth, and development. And towards that end, we are wholeheartedly in favor of developing this corner lot.
Thank you. Next is Walter Perry of 220 Middle Street.
Good evening, Mayor and Board of Aldermen. I'm Walter Perry. I reside at 220 Middle Street, which is more or less in the backyard of the property in question tonight. I come to you really with the concern of public involvement. As someone who lives in the block where these lots are located, I think there was a missed opportunity to involve the public and get some feedback on what could be the future and best use of this property. Certainly, we all want downtown to prosper. I, as a resident of downtown, see that there's very good opportunities for this corner lot, and we see it put to good use in Mumfest, for example. This is where you go to get your cotton candy and your kettle corn when those great events come to town, and that public space is used by the city to support those major activities that we all enjoy. I think that what I would like to ask is that you defer voting to move this resolution forward tonight and have some type of opportunity for the public to submit input. As a resident here, notice the big sign went up, right, for prime real estate to be sold. But there was no prime time public involvement on getting public input on how this should be conducted as far as what the future use of this property should be. I think there's a lot of opportunity for, if we were to look at something, we could do something to maybe honor veterans at that corner, or to have a place where children could come and enjoy food from food trucks maybe parked along the curb. There's plenty of creative opportunities that could be applied at this particular property in question. So I conclude by asking you not to move the resolution forward tonight to sell, but to instead have an opportunity for public involvement. You have an opportunity to do something spectacular and make an impact for years to come for the public good. And I ask you to consider that in your deliberations this evening. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Maria Cho, 252 Pollock Street.
Good evening, Mayor, Board of Aldermen, and staff. I have critical questions that require answers, and I respectfully ask this board to provide these answers through thoughtful discussion before voting on the sale of 304 and 308 South Front Street, the Talbot's lot. Why is the Talbot's lot public property that has been historically enjoyed by citizens being sold at this time? What is the urgency? How was this lot determined to be surplus, meaning no longer required to provide governmental services to the citizens of New Bern? Was there a formal vote taken to sell the property? The Talbot's lot was originally purchased with Municipal Service District taxpayer monies. It was reported by the mayor that the proceeds of this sale will be consigned back to the MSD, and this gives me pause. In 1985, a 7-member board advisory committee was appointed by the BOA. The current MSD has no official advisory committee and no formal structure functioning within a closed system. Who will be responsible for the financial oversight of the proceeds? And who will determine how these monies are expended? We need an open system. Sorry, excuse me. It was posited during a recent Downtown Business Council meeting that the Talbot's lot is being sold because it needs to be developed. How will an educational resource hub spur economic development or growth for the downtown? The words sale and develop seem to be used interchangeably. Has there ever been a transparent, community-driven plan employed to develop the Talbot's lot? According to the literature that I've recently researched, community engagement and input are critical to the success for large and small projects that are planned for cities. Intentional and sustainable development first requires input and buy-in from community stakeholders that will use or use the space, including those that have an intimate and unique relationship with it. You need inclusive public input first, from the people that live, work, and play downtown. This city needs a strategic plan that drives its community development. Mr. Mayor, I respectfully challenge your assessment of the need for more public space. Pocket Park were your words, not mine. And successful downtowns are those that are walkable, and we need public spaces, both large and small, throughout the downtown. In October of 2021, UNC Keenan-Flagler School of Business published a piece on the leading reasons that public space is in high demand among real estate developers. And these are some of the reasons. Scale. Less is more with small. City officials think bigger is better, but it's often the intimate public spaces that make it the best urban experience. 2, features. Water features like a splash pad and fountains, as well as integrated public art and dog-friendly areas attract people and increase foot traffic. This is a formula for success, especially for existing downtown businesses. Funding. Funding includes initiating public and private partnerships between government, private developers, and philanthropy to ensure successful development of public spaces. And last, value. Industry professionals and experts see public space as a catalyst for economic development. They add value, that value increasing. Resiliency. How is resiliency being factored into the future sale of the Talbot's lot? Do future development plans of the lot include the incorporation of pervious surfaces and constructed wetlands to help with hazard mitigation? During the Board of Aldermen meeting on February 8, 2022, a newspaper keeper stated that the Talbot's lot was one of the few remaining green spaces and that creating more impervious surfaces would add flooding and stormwater issues once the project was built. We need to ensure downtown is more resilient. As you vote tonight, are you applying a critical lens to a legacy that embraces resiliency, fosters inclusion and innovation, a legacy that prioritizes the input from all citizens that live, work, and play downtown, and not just a few? I respectfully ask you no vote to the sale of the public property at 308 South Front Street, reinstate a formal MSC advisory committee for oversight, make shared community visioning and program modeling first your priority. And while you have been elected as decision makers for our city, please remember that we, the citizens of New Bern, are positioned at the top of your organizational chart, and the downtown is for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just for the record, Alderman Royal's participation has terminated.
Okay.
Just prior to Ms. Cho's comments.
Okay, thank you. Next up is J. Paul Johnson, 219 Craven Street.
Thank you. I won't be redundant.
Thank you. Next up is Seth Plank and Nicole Plank of 3311 Tack House Road.
I've decided not to comment, but good evening. Thanks for having us.
Okay, thank you. Gary Curry, 232 Craven Street, residence 1101 Country Club Drive.
Good evening. Thanks for giving me some time. I don't have a big fancy speech or anything, but I just wanted to say I am in favor of this development. I moved here in 2006. The lot's been empty the entire time I've been here. There was one project, probably back 2008, I think, or so, where they were going to develop, and I think it fell through. I've served on a number of boards in the community. I've never heard a group get together quite like this. I think it's great that everyone's getting together, but in all these years to say, hey, let's do something with this lot. So I'm glad it's happening now, but in my opinion, it may be a little too late. I'd like to see it develop. Developing a property about a half block away, I think this will benefit that business. So I'm in favor.
Thank you. Jeff Medlin, 606 West Wilson Creek Drive.
Mr. Mayor, board, and staff, Jeff Medlin. I'm the immediate past chair of the Chamber of Commerce, and I will echo some of the same comments that Kevin did. Our board chair regrets he could not be here. The mission of the Chamber of Commerce, as Kevin said, is to promote an environment that's conducive to businesses of all sizes. And it just strikes me that a willing buyer has made an offer to what appears to be a willing seller, and that transaction needs to go through. So the Chamber is in favor of the transaction.
Thank you. Lisa Edwards, 3602 Fox Chase Road.
I'm the one speaking.
Okay. Michael Gleason, 907 Runaway Bay.
I want to thank the Alderman for a chance to speak. I have an opinion on this, but my opinion is more or less about process. I think process is the key and the grand takeaway from tonight. I am so glad to be, if the word superfluous, total agreement and honored to have the same feeling as Nelson, is that we're all friends here. I would hope that this issue wouldn't be something that becomes sort of demarcation of dividing the town. But with process comes results, and positive results, and ones that give everybody a chance to have a voice. And without a voice, you don't have what is truly needed for the kind of government that we would like in New Bern. My wife and I have enjoyed the prosperity that New Bern has given us. We've enjoyed with our business at the Jarvis. And the new owners that have the Jarvis will also need to be seated in a town that knows how to get business done in the open, under transparency, but at the same time with a very lively debate from both sides, so that you take your data, and I say data, not emotions, and come to a great decision. If that's tonight, if tonight's a decision, albeit, but I'm more or less the process for the future, because this will not only be the only issue probably discussed in this town. So all I ask for is process, transparency, and friendships.
Thank you. Nancy Falcone, 923 Pollock Street.
I just want to say I'm not for the sale of the lots. I've lived here since 1989.
Okay, thank you. Dan Roberts, 301 South Front Street.
Mr. Mayor, Alderman, staff, thank you for having this tonight. I'm directly across from what I call the dog walking park. So I see it every day from my porch, from my office windows. From a selfish side, you know, I like the view of City Hall, the greatest hardware store around, a lot of retail. I get to see a lot of things. It's fun. But I've grown up here all my life, and I remember when downtown, nobody wanted to live downtown. Nobody wanted to have a business down here. And progress is tough, but if you don't have progress, you're going to go the opposite way. We've lost some green spaces around here. I love the outdoors. We have a wonderful green space at Martin Marietta Park. We have a park right down here, another park on the water. We have lots of parks that we have an opportunity to improve and make nicer. And I think more money would be better spent on those than turning this into a park. So from an unselfish side, I think it's better for New Bern if you do sell it. We're going to have a higher tax base. We need more money in this city. I hear the problems about affordable housing and things of that nature. It just doesn't come for free. You have to have more tax money, and we're not going to get it by leaving that not buildable. And we may have another park. I think the jury's still out on Mr. Kessler. I remember the McClellan's building. It is now a park. We really don't need a whole lot of very small parks where we used to have beautiful buildings. So I would encourage you to consider selling it. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Polo, 223 Craven Street.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, good evening, Aldermen, and city staff. Thank you for being here tonight. And welcome, citizens. Thank you for coming out tonight. I've heard a couple things tonight that I just find somewhat inconsistent, and the most regular one I hear is that sale equals development. And we're going to talk about sale of the property tonight, but we're not talking about development of the property tonight. And it's an omission that I think is glaring. The development plan is what everyone keeps referring to. We want to see development, but that's not what we're talking about. We're only talking about the sale. and the two are not equal. And I ask you to really look at that. Are we moving forward with a development plan that benefits the city and its citizens, or are we looking forward to a sale of a piece of property with no plan for development that anyone is aware of, that anyone's had a chance to discuss, or been submitted to our development department of the city? So my comments address timing, process, and transparency. And those are the concerns that I have as a citizen. There seems to be an urgency about selling this lot. And I wonder, why is there an urgency? There hasn't been a time where the public was asked what they want to do before the sale, or if the public had ideas for development. There's just a sense of urgency. Concerns about the sale have been brought to your attention, yet we move forward with the same urgency. The threat of losing a deal, I understand, brought us to this very meeting tonight. But the threat of losing a deal on a lot that seems to be very valuable and therefore needs to be sold for development at such a rate is inconsistent. If it's so valuable, why not give a chance for others to look at how it can be developed, not just sold, and then prosper with that? If we sell it and it's not developed, I'm not sure we've gained anything but another piece of private property. We don't have a plan for development. At least it hasn't been discussed and shared. If it's turned into a nonprofit, we don't get the tax dollars from that. And I understand that maybe has been suggested. So if development of the lot is the priority of this group or this meeting, then why isn't it being discussed? What is the development plan? And is it the best use, highest and best use of the property for the citizens of New Bern? If tax dollars are what we're looking, gain the money of the sale and use tax dollars, is this the highest and best use for that? It's been omitted completely, and I wonder why. If the sale of the property is about the money that it generates, then I question why. If we need the money, we have to sell this property to a private citizen without a development plan, but we need the money. Why do we need the money? And where is the transparency in that? If the money needs to go back into MSD to build that coffer for a commitment that's been known, why hasn't it been shared? We have $800,000 in the MSD account now, taxpayer money that is there for use without a stated plan. Why do we need $825,000 more added to that coffer? So there seems to be no development plan, but no stated urgency for the sale. And yet there's concern in this room for its sale. I would like to say that there was a meeting that I was part of. It was a virtual meeting on the phone. I think we've all become comfortable with those now. But during that meeting, and it was attended by the then Alderman Sabrina Bengal and the then Alderman Jeffrey Odom. Several others were on the line. And during that meeting, the purpose of the call was to discuss an advisory committee for the MSD and what that advisory committee should look like. A citizen advisory committee, so that there's taxation with representation, not the other way around. And during that time, the aldermen that were on the phone stated that there was a commitment to a Pepsi museum of $1 million of MSD money. They wanted to use $1 million of MSD money for seed capital to build a building so that Pepsi could move their collection here, to build that Pepsi museum. And that the MSD money was already spoken for. And that was a couple of years ago, but we're moving forward expeditiously with the sale of a property for money that's going to go back in the MSD. And I wonder if that money is now to be used as to fulfill the commitment of the $1 million to the Pepsi Museum. And if it is, why can't it be discussed? If that's the commitment that this board thinks is worthwhile to use MSD funds, why don't we hear about it and kind of come alongside? If it's best use for tax dollars within that MSD, then I think it should be discussed, and maybe even discussed openly. If it's not about the MSD, there is no commitment, then why haven't we discussed what the development plan is? if there is one. I can't say there isn't. It hasn't been disclosed that we're aware of. So I ask that we take a step back, take a breath, vote no on this sale, because we're moving forward without clear reason, and know that if that's a valuable piece of property that can gain or earn us a city profit, then it'll be there in the future. But let's look at what our process is and what the transparency related to it is, and get citizen kind of backing for it so we can become unified in this town. I also ask that we take a breath and take a step back and put a citizen advisory committee back in place for the MSD so that ideas can be vetted and cleared through the taxpayers so that we do have taxation with representation, not the other way around. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is Laurie Ingram of 208 New Street.
Hi. So I want to start off with I'm opposed to the sale, and I've done an awful lot of research. I haven't prepared anything because frankly my head's spinning. One of the things that I looked into is some of the process that's happened over the years, over the year and a half from like October 2021 when it was first offered up to Kessler as incentive to build the Elks Lodge or Elks Building. I looked at the August 9th Board of Aldermen meeting where a alderwoman who was actually voted out of office at that point made a suggestion, just threw it out there and said, hey, let's put a sign on the lot. There was no vote taken. It was suggested, and it was, and I've looked at the meetings, I've watched the videos, there wasn't a vote taken. So it was put out there as, hey, let's just sell it. There was a working meeting on the 3rd of November, and at that working meeting, the new board was there, and it was suggested, hey, let's set a minimum price. There was a little bit of discussion about the minimum price. $750 was established as the minimum price, even though the appraisal was substantially less. And then on the 11th, November 8th Board of Aldermen meeting, there was a resolution, and I have been trying, and Foster, I'm sorry I keep bugging you, but I am trying to get to the bottom of it. The resolution uses some language, and what it says is that this lot has been made surplus, and that this lot is no longer needed for the citizens of New Bern. And I am trying to get to the bottom of how that determination was made. And I've asked, and I can't find it. And I really would, before you consider selling this, I really think that the Board of Aldermen need to ask that question, need to answer that question for us, how you determined this was no longer of benefit for the citizens of New Bern. Because it seems to me like this whole process was not thought out. It was not done with evaluation. It was not done with analysis. And I have many concerns about how the process was done, and I'm just bringing up my biggest one. And I would respectfully ask that you do not sell this property, and that you do take a look at what evaluation was done, what discussion amongst the board, what analysis was done. The resolution that was signed after the Board of Aldermen meeting said that it was determined by the city manager with input from the department heads. And to date, I have not been able to get that answer. So I respectfully request that you provide that information before you consider selling something like this.
Thank you. Catherine Adolph, 316 Liberty Street.
Glasses on. Good evening, Mayor Odom and Board of Aldermen. My name is Catherine Adolph. I'm just kind of stunned about the process that we see ourselves in tonight. Talbot's lot conversation was almost a decade ago, yet the property is still referred to as the Talbot lot. A developer who had an idea. There have been many developers who've looked at this lot, but we call it the Talbot's lot. 10 years And in the 10 years since the Talbot lot discussion, our state, our city, our nation have experienced extraordinary events. Just in our town, leadership at Swiss Bear changed. Hurricane Florence decimated our downtown and pushed businesses and normal life almost over the brink. Thousands struggling to keep afloat were then hit by a worldwide pandemic. A lot's gone on in the 10 years since we've had the conversation about the Talbot's lot. As one of her last public actions on the Board of Aldermen, then Alderman Bengal asked for the sale of this land, the Talbot's lot. Not sure why, but the then board agreed immediately, and the city manager got his direction to put up a big sign for sale, which he did. Since then, you, a new board, have been elected by the people. Clearly, you have the authority to sell our publicly owned property to the private sector. That said, you also have the authority to reconsider the sale and keep it for the public. Just several weeks ago, we saw this board halt the sale of property owned by the Redevelopment Commission to a person who had put it in a bid and a check at City Hall. So clearly, there is precedence by this board to stop and change the course of action for the future. Mayor Odom wrote in an email to a citizen last week, any board can make a decision to change what a previous board puts in place. I guess he's right. You can change this. And you, this newly seated board, have the power to reconsider the sale, seek public thought, and even stop or delay the proposed sale. No deal is done until all parties sign on the dotted line, and at this point, all parties have not signed on the dotted line. I do not know the potential buyer, but hear that she is a very lovely lady who would like to invest her money in a way that would honor her family. She has done what the city has asked, followed your process, and must be frustrated, as are we, the public, the taxpayers of this city. For a businessman, this is a simple transaction. We've got some land to sell. You've got the money. We're good to go. But I would like to suggest that this is not just the run-of-the-mill surplus city land sale. This isn't stuff that is abandoned that nobody wants. This is not a business transaction of little value to the city. This is the heart of New Bern. This is the public place where we live. This is different and very different from your surplus sales that are common fare, as we have watched for a long time. This lot is too important to the economic well-being of our little downtown to be left in the hands of the highest bidder. The manner that the city has addressed this potential sale, while apparently legal, in my view, demonstrates an almost total lack of city planning or regard for the taxpayers of this great city who entrust you to take care of them for the continued economic success of our downtown. Business as usual in New Bern, I guess. And tonight is just another box to be checked. Legal, yes, check the box, we've done the process. If the city can find $4 million to build an elevator, surely it has the capacity to develop a public project on land that it owns. You don't have to buy it, you own it. We own it, the public. Land that would attract tourist dollars, benefit businesses downtown, and provide a place of beauty and art for the public and generations of people that will come here far after we are all gone. This is about our future. It's not about our present. It's not the short-term, let's make a quick dollar. This is about who we want to be as a community for the future. Sadly, over a decade, we have watched our Board of Aldermen defer to business interests that seem to take precedence over systemic public planning. Our mayor, who desires the sale, I believe, rushed this meeting for the buyer. Went to Sabrina Bengal and Danny Batten's business group a few days ago, not to the public to pitch the sale, but to the business group that resides in this building. We, the public, have been in the dark. Business as usual. But what if we came together to imagine a great city? And there are many ideas. I'm not suggesting that the idea I put forward today is the one that should go forward by any means. I'm just presenting an imagination. And this picture here shows just a clip art from the internet of communities that build public spaces. I have listened to some of the prior speakers here demean, I think, the notion of park. It is very insulting to me that our leadership at Swiss Bear and the Chamber and others would think that this is some sort of, we don't need another park. This is about economic development. I just spent the weekend in Raleigh. Every other place I went was a public place where people could sit, where they could enjoy their city. They could go to restaurants, they could go to bars, and it incentivizes the business community, by the way. So here's just, I had hoped for 3 weeks. We were hoping that by February 14th we would be at this meeting and I would have some architectural design specific to this property to show the board. I don't. So this is a cut and paste of just one of a million ideas if we imagine greatness. What if we imagine a community square that would be a tourist attraction and economic engine to bring dollars to New Bern's restaurants, bars, mercantile businesses, hospitality, and tourism, just from an economic point of view. Something special, fun, with a water feature in the middle of the square that could be a splash park for children and families, visitors. No, not 3 of them, that's kind of large, but you get the idea. That in the summer, kids could run through it. Old people like me could run through it on the hot and humid days of summer. We could design food trucks there for economic incentives with park benches and public arts. And of course, more public bathrooms because we have a lot of bars, so we need more bathrooms. Imagine these fountains at Christmas in green and red. Imagine some greatness for our city. The city already owns this lot. You don't have to buy it. You don't have to put out cash for this. Properties near rivers and floodplains do not need more concrete. In fact, the more permeable the design, the better. How does this property fit into New Bern's resiliency plan? The design of a permeable public square in the middle of downtown would be touted in eastern communities, coastal communities, as a way to bring economic development while mitigating climate change. And in the case of New Bern, flooding from the next hurricane, which we will have, and the waters will come here. So think about how you want the waters to come in and out if you have been in tune with the world that we live in. I don't know much, but I do know that this is a one-time check to the city. A one-time payment and nothing more. Maybe some tax dollars for, I don't know, the land value. But once it's sold to the private sector, you have nothing to say. we, the public, have nothing to say. Show us the spreadsheets detailing projected revenues to the city based on this sale. Show us the financial calculations for projected tourist dollars based on an educational hub on the property which has been floated. Who knows what the buyer might do, but that's been floated. I can't imagine tourists and conventioneers are going to rush to New Bern to come to an educational hub. Maybe. And I'm an educator. Show us the financial calculations for other models of public development. Show us some thinking about dollars that could be generated by other ideas for this lot. Not only for the city, but for our downtown businesses, for economic development. At the last meeting of the board, you talked with financial investors interested in making money with our $67 million reserve account. I think that's the number, I'm not sure. Why not use some of those funds for the public good, the business good? Instead of building up your reserve account for a rainy day, to me this feels like a rainy day. I would urge you to stop this process, at the very least to delay the process until an inclusive, open community process can be followed and not kept in this building with the entities who have come before you today. Thank you.
Thank you. John and Patricia Skinner of 340 Johnson Street.
Good evening. This is the first time I've attended a board meeting and spoken before a board. And the reason I came tonight is because I wanted to hear about this proposal. I don't know very much about it. I don't know whether I'm for or against it. I don't have a lot of information on it. Last night at the Hydra meeting, I asked if the board put out an information on what's going to be done, how much it's going to cost, what the proposal is, the specifics of it, the pros and cons, the alternatives that you considered. I would think that that sort of information should come out to the public so that they can comment in a meaningful way on what's going to be done. Let me just tell you from what I heard and what I saw, I'm a little concerned about the process for public participation. I might be wrong, but I think you made your mind up. I hope I'm wrong. And I may be wrong, but I think that this is just to get the box checked that you had a public meeting. I hope that that's wrong. And I hope to hear from you about the type of things that you've done and can do to improve on that. But if that is true, that's not good governance.
Rusty Ingram, 208 New Street.
Mr. Mayor and Alderman, I just wanted to say I agree with the comments of Mrs. Cho, Dr. Polo, Mrs. Ingram, Mr. Skinner, and Kathy Adolph, and I hope that you do not move forward with this sale.
Okay, thank you. Lori Ann Prill, 212 New Street.
Mayor and board, I'm going to go backwards in time just a little bit. So for 15 plus years after the 2008 attempt from Mr. Tolson to develop this lot into the quote-unquote Talbots, the city has used this property, as has the residents, business, and guests, as green space. And recently there seems to be a sudden rush to sell. I do not recall ever seeing these lots listed for sale on the surplus properties for sale on the City of New Bern website where you list your surplus properties for sale. It was not until the MOU with the Kessler organization, and when that went public, that discussion about developing and or selling these lots was publicized. That was February of 2022. If you read the MOU, paragraph 6 clearly restricts the city's ability to solicit, accept, or negotiate any proposal from any party to acquire, lease, or license these lots. That's what you signed. Today, when I asked if in fact the MOU was terminated or amended, it was confirmed that no formal action has been taken by the board following the execution of the MOU on February 22nd, 2022. So there's a strong possibility that the MOU is in full force and effect, thereby prohibiting the city of New Bern from entering into any sale of the Talbot's lot. And I would strongly recommend that your legal counsel take a good hard long look at this. The city may be in breach simply by putting up the sign that was suggested by Ms. Bengal as she was exiting her term as alderperson. Once again, we find ourselves in a quagmire of misinformation and liability. When is it going to end? Under the direction of the board, the city manager was charged with engaging the department heads and staff to review the status. And we have no documentation, no information, no input, nothing other than a signature in the November meeting saying that we have surplus property, let's sell it, but do you even have the legal right to do so? Never mind the moral, never mind the input from our community. What research was utilized to make the determination that this is surplus property? 15 plus years, the city, by example, has utilized this property as green space. Now the sudden rush to sell. One more time, we are sitting here as residents curious what is going on behind closed doors.
Next up is Michael Moore of 1502 Lucerne Way.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to come and speak tonight. I had a prepared speech here, if you will. I'm choosing not to read it, not because I don't think it's pertinent, and not because I don't believe in it, because I do. But I've heard some things here tonight that haven't changed my mind, but they've certainly given me some food for thought. And I'm hoping that it's kind of opened some eyes and ears, not just within the community, but within the board as well. I'm not in favor of another park in downtown New Bern. We've heard a lot about that, and what I'm going to say is probably a little bit redundant at this point, but we have other parks, we have other areas within the city where these activities that happen really over the course of a year pretty infrequently, that people attach to this parcel. They could easily be undertaken on other green spaces in close-in proximity of downtown. I also do believe that the property should be sold. I believe that it's quite possible that some additional planning could take place that might help push that along in a good direction. Again, I'm speaking on behalf of my wife and myself. We do believe in the sale of the property. It's languished for a long time. Nothing has happened there. It hasn't generated tax dollars. I'm all in favor of putting that property to work, let it earn some tax dollars for us, get some businesses, either commercial, maybe even some residential. I think there's an opportunity for something unique with parking that might help the downtown parking situation as well. But to keep it, maintain it, and have to pay the expense of maintaining a vacant lot going forward, I think it's not a good use of taxpayers' dollars. And I'm speaking again, I'm not a business owner, I'm not a downtown resident, but I do live in the city of New Bern, and I think we need to keep a close eye on what happens there, maximize it for the tax benefit, and let's do the right thing for the citizens of New Bern. Thank you.
Ms. Barbara Simpson, 480 West North Carolina Highway 55.
First, let me give honor to God and respect to those who's in the sound of my voice. And I thank the aldermen that had the foresight and to let the rest of the aldermen know that we're supposed to have a public meeting when you start talking about stuff that the taxpayers paying for. And I am a taxpayer, or go any further, I am a taxpayer, and I understand about business. I know it's about making money. I know we elected you guys to represent us, but remember what I said, to represent us. You have to bring, you start talking about making money, you have to bring that before us to each alderman. Each alderman should bring it to their ward and let them know what's going on. And I'm glad I heard about it, because I was, I say, well, I didn't hear too much about it, then all of a sudden it's a sale. First they said it was going to sell for $750,000, and then the private person that bought it said $871,000. So they were putting it out of reach of people. But we know that we need to keep this area public, because this is our place. Our taxes paid for it. And when you're talking about private, that means that you're not going to really have any control over what goes there. You might want to sit down, you might not be able to sit there if it's private. But at least if we keep it our thing, we need to keep it for us. And I'm always going to talk for the underserved. We always need to have a place for them. We're not talking about you just giving us money. We want you to do some things for us. And we elected you guys, yes, we elected you all to represent us. But that's why all of you all are supposed to come together with us like we're doing now, and you decide you want to sell something that the taxpayers are going to pay for. I know you need money. There ain't no problem with that. I have no problem with making money. But I do have a problem when you step over us and go behind closed doors and make a decision that we don't know anything about. So what I want you to do, just remember the underserved. Whatever you do, it's a shame that we have the only time that underserved can come down is when we have the Month Fest. You need something else offered to us. Yes, we willing to pay a few dollars. Yes, we are. But you got it. It's about humanity and morality. You have to look out for everybody. Not only the ones that have money that can put money in your pocket, but those who don't have no but a little bit. And we got to remember, even though the underserved don't have dollars, but they do have sense. And thank you, Lord.
Next up is Johnny Robinson, 5300 Rossi Road.
Thanks, everybody. Johnny Robinson, I live in Trent Woods, but I do own the property across the street from this lot over here, and I am in favor of the transaction. To me, it's more of a transactional aspect. We solicited to sell it. We got an offer, went through an upset period, nobody upset it. And I really like some of the pictures I've seen, the park idea. If that was the way it was desired to go, there was an opportunity to upset it. A group of investors could have bought it and done that. You look at Pullen Park up in Raleigh in the late 1800s. Pullen Park was bought by the Pullen family, or now it's land owned by the Pullen family, and they gave it to the city of Raleigh, and today it still stands, and there's very strict strings attached to that. So, that's just my thought on the process. I think it's more of a transactional thing, and we're at a point now where we have somewhat of a commitment that we need to follow through with. So, thank you.
Ben Bunn, 501 East Front Street.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak tonight. I've got some questions and concerns for the Board of Aldermen that I'd like to share. The questions being considered tonight is whether or not the City of New Bern should sell a special piece of land in the heart of downtown. A second question is, how does the city pay for what it thinks it wants or needs at this time? This second question is age-old and has and will continue to be asked. Communities will always be searching for ways to pay for desired growth, but at what price? At some point, community growth overwhelms what was special and desirable about a place, and people no longer find the community desirable and choose to leave. Communities become villages, villages become towns, Towns become cities, cities become metropolises, and that specialness of a place is lost. People leave and look for that specialness elsewhere. I think there are some here tonight who can relate to that feeling. New Bern is one of those special places, a unique and desirable place that enjoys a sense of community. It is a special place with a diversity of people, spirit, energy, and talents. A place that has overcome challenges throughout its history. It is a special place where residents share the joys of life and help each other weather the storms and the fires and floods and sicknesses that have come and that will come again. The third question: as growth in New Bern continues to be considered and planned for, will New Bern continue to be special and desirable? Or will it grow into something different? Something less special and desirable? We hope not. We always want to make it better. Each one of you here tonight has been chosen as a leader and alderman from our communities to share ideas, questions, and concerns. Your responsibilities are much more than trying to find answers to that second question mentioned earlier: how to pay for what we think we want or need. Those ideas, questions, and concerns we share should also consider the long-term effects they may bring to our town and whether or not they help to keep New Bern special, desirable, and unique years from now when we're no longer here. What do we want our town, this special place, to be like for our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, and those who continue to live here long after we're gone, long after we've made the decisions about ideas, questions, and concerns? Well, the decisions made here this time be ones that will better serve the communities of people we represent for now and years to come? Or will the decisions made here this time serve only a few with special interests? Will our visions and decisions for the future of New Bern be something our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren will be proud to say, my father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, or my mother, my grandmother, or my great-grandmother helped to make this happen in our town? Will that thing that you helped make happen in our town through your decisions and your votes be something that you'll be proud of in years to come? You're all chosen leaders from our community. Good leadership is not always easy. It sometimes requires making difficult decisions. It sometimes requires not agreeing with the opinions being declared as what's best for New Bern by someone assuming to know what's best and using their assumed positional authority to make such declarations. The last question: do you have the strength and conviction as an elected community leader and alderman to vote your conscience for what you believe is the right decision? The decision whether to sell this special parcel of land in the middle of our downtown or to hold on to it and consider other possibilities for its use. There is no urgency to sell this lot, as some have declared. It's been sitting vacant for over 22 years with no urgency to sell. It's been used by the community during those 22 years as a gathering place for people and public events. What will the legacy of your decision tonight mean to the city in the long term? If this lot is sold to a private individual, the city will lose any opportunity for future considerations. Expected revenues from the sale of the lot are not urgently needed at this time. The city has over $67 million in available funds and over $800,000 in funds that are reserved to be used in the municipal support district downtown. Money received by the city for the sale of this lot would just be added to double the available reserve funds for the municipal service district downtown. Who and what are the real issues driving this sense of urgency to sell this lot? I'm asking you tonight to vote not to sell this choice piece of property in our downtown. I'm asking you to consider other community inputs for possible uses that would include all of our citizens. Uses that could be a cornerstone in keeping with the specialness of our town. I'm asking that you vote to keep New Bern a place where all people desire to be in, work in, and share in the joys of living in this special place. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Michael Raines, 312 South Front Street.
Thank you for the opportunity to come up here and speak. I don't really have a strong feeling either way, besides I'm part owner of the building and parking lot that basically surrounds this property. I've got a survey here from 2000 when the father helped negotiate the purchase of the property for Swiss Bear, how the city ended up with it. And every few years I hear about some project's going to go here, and I always like to pull out this old survey. And you know, people talk about what it is now and what it could be. I remember when I used to go to my father's office, that they rented it on the corner of this property, and just remember how junky it looked. There were falling down chain link fences with briars growing up in them. On the survey here, you see broken asphalt, chain link fences, metal buildings, none of which would be allowed in downtown now. But this was I guess you would call it grandfathered inside or something that had just been allowed to kind of stay there. The property was purchased by the city, and it has been used for a lot of different things over the years. And it's nice having spaces like that. And when I moved back here and started working, I got to get involved with the city and see all the stuff that happens around here. And as a person in real estate, and go through development, see all the time things that I know from the beginning won't work, and things that you can see from the beginning are a great idea. This property does have its limitations for development. I mean, all of us know parking sometimes can be an issue. And I don't know what the end use is, but what a lot of people have been hearing about, if it were used for some kind of educational or whatever, that would probably be about the best use I've heard for this property in the 12 plus years that it's been possibly for sale. There's parking the city has across the street, and if anybody's ever been to any kind of campus, you have to walk a long ways to parking, so I don't think that would be a problem. And I just think that, kind of like some people said earlier, if you put something out there for sale, you have somebody that comes along, you do your formal steps of upset bids. If it were me purchasing this property, I would probably be like the last 2 or 3 people that tried to purchase this property and would walk. If you are 100% against any change or any development in your town, it's hard for me to believe you're actually for the town. And so if we run off another developer, I'm sure the Aldermen will say, we're not going to touch that again for however long. But I think the opportunity we have now is a fairly good one. Again, I'm the closest neighbor to this property. Every day I work next door, and I enjoy seeing the grass there, but this whole property was covered with broken asphalt, brick buildings, metal buildings, chain link fence. it could be better, much better use than it was. In a grass field, I don't think really serves some of us that have dogs or something like that maybe, but it's a good opportunity I think that the city has. And if you stare off every developer that comes to town, it won't take long, they'll quit coming. That's it, thank you.
Madam Clerk, do we have any more sign-ups?
No, sir.
Okay, that concludes item number 1. Board, we're moving on to item number 2. Consider adopting a resolution to sell 304 and 308 South Front Street. Alderman McKenzie?
Yes. It's been a lot said tonight, and early on, we can agree and disagree. We can threat and not threat. You know, we don't have to be mad with one another. It doesn't matter one way or another. A decision has to be made, and we have to make it for what is right for the city. It doesn't mean what you want or what I want. I'm only one vote. It doesn't matter one way or another. But the thing that it is, there's a lot of things that were said tonight that I think was misinformation. So I want to ask the city attorney and the manager to correct some of those things if they can. And after that, I feel that we can move forward in the decision that each individual have to be respected for the decision that they make. You know, I want to say one thing that I had a lot of phone calls today. That wasn't very nice, but that's okay. I know this is just talk, and that's what people do. So, but I appreciate it. They keep their thoughts to themselves the next time. Make their phone number clearly where I can see who I'm talking to. But I'm fine with that. It don't bother me. My decision is mine, not this man's, not this lady. So you don't have to be mad with me, upset with me, or blackball me. It doesn't matter. My decision is mine, and I want you to respect that. You understand me? Because that's what I was told today. Do you understand me? Whoever that person were, if they're here tonight, I'm here. If you want to talk to me, I can do it. Okay? I'm not afraid of nobody. So I just want to get that out tonight because they was pretty ugly to me on the phone. I don't know who they were. I got a few calls of them, but that's okay. But I just want to let you know, I'm not them. I'm me. So, Mr. Manager, if you don't mind, could you express some of those things that you heard that through your note writing? And Ms. Attorney, if you can explain some of those illegal things that they said that we have done, you know, because I'm not a part of that. So if you could articulate that, I appreciate it.
In particular, the MOU and not having the right to sell the property.
Yes, sir. The right thing. Okay. Thank you.
So Mayor, Alderman, I'll give you the timeline for this piece of the property, and then I'll turn that over to the attorney to discuss the other. So on August 9th, 2022, the previous board gave direction to me to post signs on the lot advertising it for sale. On November 3rd, the current board expressed a consensus to establish a minimum bid of $750,000. So a sign was not put on the lot until that was done. A sign was actually put on the lot in question on November 4th. On November 7th, an ad was placed on the city's website discussing the property. On November 8th, the governing board adopted a resolution declaring the property as surplus and establishing the minimum bid of $750,000. On November 16th, an offer of $825,000 was received. On December 13th, the board adopted a resolution to initiate the upset bid process. On December 27th, a legal ad was published to advertise the bid and announce the deadline for upset bids. On January 6, 2023, an upset bid period ended and no additional bids were received. On January 24th, the board tabled the sale of the property until February 14th to allow the public input prior to the consideration of the sale. Then this special meeting was called for tonight, and here we are.
Mr. Mayor, just to add some additional historical context for the city's acquisition of this property and where we sit currently, our office has reviewed our files and this is the history to the best of our knowledge. In 2000, and with the city's MSD funds, the city purchased the corner lot that was a former gas station. The purchase price was about $150,000. And at that time, the city's plan was to use that lot for a surface parking lot. The city thereafter removed the buildings, cleared the lot in preparation for the parking lot. Several attempts over the years were made to bring that parking lot to fruition, and those attempts were unsuccessful. Thereafter, the city pivoted and focused its parking efforts towards the inner block. And there were about 17 owners that were involved, and substantial resources were used for engineering, illustrations, and the like. Additionally, the city needed about 1,000 square feet of real property to install an electric switching device, which are the green boxes that are in the northeast corner of the lot. So the city did undertake that effort. Later, after some more attempts at trying to bring a parking lot to that lot, the board turned its efforts to a revitalization project. That would include Joseph A. Banks store and the Talbot store to do long-term leasing, 3 floors of residential space. This project that we know as the Talbot's project was around 2005. The concept was public space, public restrooms, and the retail space. Upon issuance of those permits, a group of concerned citizens appealed, there was litigation, and that project did not come to fruition. As a final effort, the city employed an economic development group a few years later to do various studies. And then they tried to find a developer. Again, a concept plan was incorporated, some public space, outdoor seating, a fountain, public restrooms, etc. Despite diligent efforts, a developer could not be located to do this project. Subsequently, the city, through its Development Services Department, made a number of attempts to market the property with no success. Fast forward to 2022, that picks up the history that the manager just articulated. Specifically as it relates to the MOU that has been discussed tonight, I think it's important to look at that document in its entirety and not look at specific paragraphs. However, I will direct the board's attention. My direct response is yes, the city does have the legal authority to sell the Talbot lot. You can, so long as you comply with the statutes, which you have. As the MOU with the, I want to say the right name of the entity, the New Bern Historic LLC, as that MOU stands, there is a paragraph 3, that specifically articulates the non-binding nature of the Memorandum of Understanding, meaning that agreement is an agreement to agree in the future, that will work together to try to develop an economic incentive package if that materializes. And there are some terms and conditions if a subsequent agreement comes to fruition. To the best of my knowledge, no economic incentive package has come back to this board. No economic agreement has been entered into by this board, so those other conditions are not applicable at this time. So yes, the Board of Aldermen does have the legal authority to sell this property and approve the sale.
Thank you. That answers your question. Thank you both very much.
Alderman Best.
Attorney, so the information you just provided to us, that somewhat clears up what was in Saturday's paper. There was an article in Saturday's paper, and it stated that the MOU was still part of the council group. Now that was in that article, so that has no effect on this particular piece of property, since that MOU was with the council group, and that was just for that particular deal. Has nothing to do with the Talbot lot.
The MOU references a couple of development sites that could be a part of an economic incentive package in the future. To date, there is no economic incentive package that includes what we know as the Talbot lot. Therefore, those portions of the MOU that would restrain, if it ever did, The Talbot's lot are not in play.
With the council group.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just want to get a clear understanding of that so that people can know, because that was in Saturday's article in the Sun Journal.
The board members have questions or comments?
Mayor, let me just add a few comments. I mean, we've had some, I think, some very good input from the public this evening on both sides of the issue. I think, as everybody knows, I've been the lone dissenter in the previous actions and votes taken by the board to move forward with the sale of this property. I presented an option that I hoped I could convince the board to look at. It's an option that I think is a very viable option for the city. There's two pieces to that, and they're both very critical pieces. The first being that the city retain ownership of the property. The second is there needs to be a commitment made by the board to move forward with doing something, developing this lot that is going to benefit the downtown business community, the downtown residential community, the entire community, and a benefit that will attract visitors to the downtown area, which will help support the local businesses downtown. Is the concept that I have presented the only concept? No, absolutely not. I made it to try to convince, again, the other board members that there are options available. The concern I have, and I've been somewhat critical of past administrations and past boards, in that the city has owned this property for 22 years. And during that time, as you've heard stated, that there have been a number of different efforts put forth to market it, to try to sell it. The most recent being with the Kessler collection. And the statements that they made to the city, to the board, is that they looked at two different options for developing that property. One as a small boutique hotel, the other as a commercial residential mixed use. And in neither case did the numbers work for them. Now, this is a developer that builds very high quality properties, have built in other communities. They know what they're doing. They are very intelligent people. And they told us the numbers don't work. You heard mention made about Mr. Tolman, who came before the city a number of years ago and looked to develop the property. I don't know the particulars as to why that development didn't happen, but the point is, it didn't happen. I'm sure there have been a number of other developers over the years that have looked at the property, and yet nothing has happened. There's a message in there that you need to look at. The message being that there are issues with this property that don't make it attractive as a developable property. It's been sitting there for 22 years. If it was a valuable, developable property, it would have been sold many years ago. So there's a message there that we need to acknowledge. We do have a viable offer on the table. There's two pieces to that. One is she's the buyer is looking to make an investment. She's looking to purchase the property. The other component is the development side. And unfortunately, we are not in a position to know what her thoughts are in terms of future development. I had the opportunity a few days ago to speak with a local resident, a businessman, who has been working with the buyer to help her go through the upset bid process. He wanted to understand my opposition to the sale of the property, and I had no problem meeting with him, explaining that to him. He was going to take that information back to the buyer. I took that opportunity to strongly urge him to talk to the buyer, to have somebody here tonight to tell her story. Unfortunately, and again, I don't fault the buyer for this, it's just unfortunate that we're not hearing her vision for the property. So we have an investment proposal before us, but we don't have that development side of it. And I think we're all a little frustrated by not having that available. I do have some concern about the MOU issue, in that the Kessler Collection is still active in the community. They still own the Elks Building. I'm not sure where they're at in that process, but they did advise us that there was going to be a period of time where we would not see activity there. It's a period of time where they're developing their plans for the project. And I'm very hopeful that they will continue moving forward. The fact that as of today, we haven't received an economic development, I forget the language, but we haven't actually received it, doesn't mean that we're not going to receive it. So I know it's maybe splitting hairs on the legal side, but there is a concern that that developer, that entity is still active in the community as far as we know, and that would seem to render the MOU as still a valid document. We've been advised that we can move forward. I just have a concern about the potential for legal repercussions. The vision that I put forth is just my vision. I think that property could be retained by the city and developed. And when I'm talking about developed, and I don't want to split hairs in terms of whether it's called a park or a plaza, I refer to it with my thought as being a plaza. But a plaza that, a public plaza that is programmed. One of the speakers this evening had put a picture up of what the property could look like. And that's great for just a visual, to give you an idea as to the potential for that property. It's a mistake, though, to start looking at developing what it's going to look like unless you know what it's going to be used for. So it's very important, it would be a very important process and a commitment that needs to be made by the board to open up a public process to identify what we would like to see at that plaza. What events, what activities throughout the entire year. What would we like to see happen there? And once you have that input and you can narrow it down to what is realistically feasible, at that point, then you start designing around that programming. You don't put the design ahead of the programming. So that's the vision that I have put forth. quite honestly, for the position that I'm in, it's a win-win situation. If no action is taken to sell the lot, I'm looking for the board to commit to developing it in some fashion. However, if the decision of the board is to sell the property, which again, I will vote no for it, but if the decision is to move forward with the sale, the community, the city is going to receive a substantial amount of money, which will go into the MSD. That money can then be used to further benefit the downtown community. So it's a win. It depends on what side of that coin, each of you are on. With that, I'll stop. I think I've expressed the thoughts that I've had.
Anything from this other end of the table? I'll say a couple things and then give you some time to think. I want to talk just a minute about process, and every process can be critiqued. There's two, and please correct me if I'm wrong, there's two ways for the city of New Bern to dispose of property. Number one is through the upset bid process, which is what we did. Number two is through a special process that the Dunn building was sold through. How many of you remember that? How many of you remember the front page of the Sun Journal? Done deal. Underground, underhand, backroom deal was done. So those are the two legal ways that we can dispose of property. Is that correct?
Those are two ways, yes, sir.
Okay. The next comment I'm going to make, hopefully will probably spur some conversation, but can anybody in this room, let's get real here. Let's cut out the stuffiness. Let's get real. Can anybody in this room tell me what in the world would happen if we came to you and said we're getting ready to give this property to the Kessler Group for economic development package? I mean, we are right now talking about selling a piece of property that city bought for $150,000. Excuse me. We signed. The city purchased this property for $150-some thousand 20 years ago, and we have an offer for $825,000 tonight with an appraised value of less than $600,000. And this is the reception that we're getting.
Taxpayers.
It doesn't matter what anyone feels tonight. If you're not going to get your way when you leave, you're not going to be happy. That's part of government. That's life. That's the reason I appreciate Nelson.
That's not true, Mayor.
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me.
That's not true.
Excuse me, sir.
You're sitting up there lecturing us.
Public comment is over. We allowed everyone ample time to speak. We didn't put a time limit on it. It's the board's time to discuss this now.
You're asking questions.
You asked a question. We asked an answer.
There was questions asked of this board. This is not a courtroom. We're not having dialogue to debate the issue. We open this meeting up for everyone to speak your opinion, which is what we've done very respectfully, matter of fact. Now it's the board's time to deliberate. But my point is, when you came here tonight, you either wanted the property sold or you didn't. Inaction is not action. For decades, this lot has set green. We heard Mumfest used. Swiss Bear has endorsed the sale of the property. They're the ones that run Mumfest.
They want to sell Union Point too.
So the point is, it's time for the board to make a decision. I am not in favor of kicking this down the road. That is what has happened. That's the reason we're sitting right here right now talking about a green grassy space for 20 plus years. So I'm imploring the board, if you don't want to sell the property, let's vote on it. Let's say we're not going to sell it. Let's give this lady her money back. How much is the deposit, clerk?
$41,250.
$41,000 that a lady has gone through the particular process. She's followed the letter of the law. We've accepted her deposit, and now we said, well, we want to kick the can down the road 3 weeks. And I don't blame her. I would have called me and said, I'm going to pull my offer too. So I'm asking the board, whether you want to vote for it or whether you want to not vote for it, let's make a decision tonight. That's what I'm imploring you to do. Alderman Best or Brinson?
The only concern that I've had with the sale of this Tablet lot was when the MOU came up again. And it had some connections and some ties with the Counselor Group. And now I have gotten, as an alderman, I'm not a lawyer, I have gotten that information from our legal counsel, and she has told all of us that there is, with that MOU and the Kessler Group pertaining to this tablets lot, there is no connection there. So that was the issue that I had. But moving forward, I also, nor do I have an underlying reason for wanting to sell this lot, no more than the fact that this lot can generate some business resources there, which is going to increase our population, which is going to provide some jobs, which is going to provide some revenue to our tax base. So that was my initial reason for saying yes and voting yes to put a for sale sign on that lot. So that's my stance on that. I think we need some tax dollars. When we can bring in businesses, we generate tax revenue, then we don't have to tax our citizens that live here and trying to raise their family here, has a job here. So that is my sole purpose of wanting to sell this lot, to see it become a boost to downtown, to generate more business for the restaurants, business owners. So that's my purpose for voting yes to put a sign on it. And I've heard the citizens here, and there were some great concerns. And as I spoke with Alderman Priel, I do think a Plaza Square area would have been a great idea for that location. But we can take that Plaza idea and we can improve Union Point Park. We got other parks here that were Martin Marietta Park. So it's really hard when you sit up here and you listen to the citizens and you listen to what you guys want, and then you hear your side of it, and then you hear the business side of it, and you hear the personal side of it. It's a tough decision, and that's all I have to say, Mayor.
Alderman Astor. Mr. Mayor, I understand making a motion will open items for discussion, so therefore I'd like to make a motion.
Can I have?
Oh, well, you'll be able to discuss, but yeah, I'll be able to.
Go right ahead.
If I make a motion, we can discuss it, right?
Yes, sir.
Is that okay with you, or do you want me to yield?
Yes, I'll talk during discussion.
Okay. That being said, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt a resolution to sell 304 and 308 South Front Street.
Have a motion.
Second.
Have a second. Discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did have phone calls and emails, and I actually got a few phone calls from Ward 6 residents, and they were in favor of selling the property. And I represent them, so I, of course, listened to them. One of the things I also did was, many of you know I live over in West New Bern, so I took Trent Road and Trent Boulevard and Pollock Street all the way down. Nice yards, nice green space, nice trees. And I parked at Union Point Park tonight, and took the 2 minutes it takes to walk up to here. So it was an evaluation for me, because I heard the issues about resiliency. I heard the issues about not having green space, about not having enough public parks in downtown. So I took the time to do that. And then, like I said, my phone calls weren't as dynamic as that mentioned it earlier, but like I said, I was elected to represent Ward 6 and also to do what we feel is best for the city. And so with that, I'm going to end up voting yes on selling this property. Because I also take the opposite tack that Alderman Prill does, in that it looks to me like the city for 20 years has tried to figure out what to do with this property to include development. And now that we finally have somebody that is willing to buy it and do something with it, I think we should jump on it.
I want to, before we take a vote, I want to read a letter. Mayor Odom, the following being MSD taxpayers support the sale of the lot known as the Talbot's lot. The lot was purchased with MSD as funds, and we request that the funds to the improved sale be put back into MSD for future economic development use. Sincerely. And it's signed by about 17 individuals: John Harrelson, Billy Falconberry, Jim Bisbee, Johnny Robinson, David Blythe, David Shigaris, Tommy Falconberry, Denny Booker, Chris Hovland, Mike Lynch, Drake Bratton, Steve Bingle, Michael Raines, Buzzy Stubbs, Aaron Mauney, Lindsey Sims, and Winnie Smith of Mitchell's, and Scott Johnson.
Mr. Mayor, one more comment.
Yes, sir.
And I do hear, and I've said this to some of you, and in my mind, we've already started the discussion about reconstituting the MSD Advisory Council, and that's something that I will push to do. And then something I've not had any discussions on is a downtown advisory council, separate from the downtown business council under the chamber, because we ought to have the tough discussions within our city, not just in the Board of Aldermen meetings, but things like, and I know this is not the time for new business, and I won't be doing any of that here, but the questions in my mind are, why are the retail businesses leaving downtown? Why are there so many ABC establishments? We hear complaints, good and bad, about street cafes. What should we be doing about those? And then, the rail that nobody wants to touch is social district. Should we or should we not have one? And so, to me, those are the things that a downtown advisory council, including the sale of this lot, would have been helpful.
Any further discussion? Now let's have a roll call starting with Alderman Prill.
Alderman Prill?
No.
Alderman Astor?
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey?
Yes.
Alderman Best?
Yes.
Alderman Brinson?
Yes.
Mayor Odom?
Yes, motion carries. Next motion we adjourn. A motion to adjourn. Do we have a
Second.
second? Have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.